Welcome to Houston Tech Rodeo. My name is Paul O'Brien with MediaTech Ventures. It is a tremendous honor to see you all virtually, but also to see many of you live and in person. A lot of us are from Austin, Texas, and we made the trek over to Houston because Houston this week has some incredible things going on, including the fact that there are torrential rains and thunderstorms and tornado warnings, making it a little bit interesting. But more importantly, what Houston is characterized to us is that this is the kickoff of what they're sort of characterizing as South by Southwest, but for East Texas, for Houston. And I'm particularly passionate about that notion because MediaTech Ventures is a business and a brand that wants to embody, wants to reinforce, and wants to help teach the world about the fact that startups and entrepreneurship and innovation, technology, starts and ends with culture, starts and ends with the fact that the arts, entertainment, music, these are draws in regions of the world that pull people into the ecosystem, that pull people together in those communities. And cities throughout the world have different ecosystems in that regard, different experiences, of course. Perhaps you're in New York, where one of our panelists tonight finds himself this evening. Perhaps you're in Los Angeles, where our other two guests this evening find themselves as well. You might be in Israel, you might be in London, you might be in Italy, you might be in Colombia. We've got countries throughout the world that are looking to Texas in particular, the United States to be certain, given the fact that it's this part of the world where we seem to understand in our own nuanced way the fact that music, film, video games, the press, news, that really drives what we do as entrepreneurs. It helps mitigate the risk that we take on as entrepreneurs. And I love that notion in particular, that it mitigates the risk that we take as entrepreneurs, because this year I heard characterize the idea that media is the new capital. Media is the new capital. And I want to let that sink in for a second, because that's why you're here with us tonight. We're here for Houston Tech Rodeo, and so we're going to talk a little bit tonight about Houston Tech Rodeo as Ted and Arabian and Susan join us on screen shortly. But we're in Houston because the arts here is colliding with the technology ecosystem that's in this part of the world to celebrate that fact. Houston Tech Rodeo kicked off just a couple of days ago, for example, with Master P giving a keynote about the vibrant culture and ecosystem that's here. Many of us came over from Austin, the live music capital of the world, the home of South by Southwest. Why? Because we were drawn to Houston. When Houston Tech Rodeo reached out to us and asked us to get involved, to get a little bit more excited about what's going on in Houston with them, they pointed out the fact that the world is paying attention to here because there's tremendous potential and tremendous opportunity here. And so we've been spending a great amount of time in the last couple of days with WeWork, with Launch Lab, with the ION at Houston, with Canon, with Houston Exponential, getting to know this ecosystem so that we can celebrate media innovation here, not just for the sake of Houston and in Houston, but because the world is paying attention to that. And that's why my guests tonight are actually not here either. That's why my guests tonight are in New York and in Los Angeles, because I wanted to share with everybody, an example of how and why we can connect the world. We can stand up, for example, a live stream podcast studio at Kung Fu Saloon in Houston in the span of about 20 minutes when it took us to set this up, with a couple of cameras here, microphones, and a crowd outside watching the live stream on the televisions in the bars. We can stand that up because that's what media technology enables. It brings together communities both online and in the real world. Ted Cohen is going to join me first. Ted is one of the most notable and substantial digital entertainment industry executives in the world. He's our host of Connected, a podcast that I'd encourage you to subscribe to. Connected is doing one-on-one personal interviews with notable folks in media innovation. He's worked at EMI Music, Warner Brothers, Philips Media, and he remains a consultant and board member at many of the most innovative digital and entertainment startups and companies on the planet. His history is incredible, and it's one that I know he's going to share tonight. As well, I'd like to introduce Arabian Prince and have him join the stage as it were. Arabian, I'm sure you know, As a musician, he's a producer, he's an entrepreneur. You probably know him by the way of the groundbreaking rap group NWA. He's the founder, though, of Innovate Next, his more recent project, a product innovation incubator and technology center in inner city Los Angeles. He's also just announced work and collaboration with Ice-T to create Finalmation Studios. Their first project is a blaxploitation animation production, in addition to the other animation work that they're producing through Finalmation Studios. The musician became the innovator, and the entrepreneur became the filmmaker and animator. That's much of what we characterize and what we're trying to do, what we're trying to celebrate, what we're trying to teach in MediaTech Ventures. Lastly, I'm going to bring to the stage for their discussion this evening, Susan Paley. Susan Paley is easily the most kick-ass female entrepreneur in the music and technology industry. She's a trailblazer who is the CEO of Drop Labs. I'm sure she'll share a little bit about what she's doing in Drop Labs. Drop Labs is changing the way that we experience sound and music. Before working with Drop Labs, she was the CEO of a company that you may know by the name of Beats by Dre. With Beats, she spearheaded the development of Beats Audio and their proprietary technology that's working through mobile phones, computers, and in fact, even cars and automobiles. And so you may be familiar with that experience as well. Without further ado, as I've got guests coming to join us here in Houston, let's say hello to Ted and Susan and Arabian, and I'll let them take over our conversation for the evening from this point forward as we explore media tech and money and get a little bit of a sense for what it means to be in New York or Los Angeles or anywhere else in the world, and being a little curious about what's going on in Houston. Thanks, everybody. Ted, good to see you. How y'all doing?
Hello? So let's talk about open heart surgery. What are your feelings on the DeBakey? Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm in New York, as Paul said. I'm at the lovely Ace Hotel. And for those of you who know me, you won't find this unusual. I talked the hotel out of giving me one of these so I can post it at home. But we're here to talk about music, media, capital, and how it all works. And for the first half of my career, I worked in artist development, helping bands get their footing and grow. Midway through that, I met Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak when they started Apple. I got interested in technology, and I've spent the second half of my career helping startups get off the ground, find their footing. More and more I've realized, and I think everyone on this conference has realized, that there's a lot of similarities in establishing a band and growing a band and establishing a startup and growing it. It's the right chemistry of people, the founders. It's the right direction. It's it's being committed to your goals, and it's being able to perform in harmony as a startup to become a big company, or you end up, changing the band members as the band gets bigger. So I'm going to start with Arabian and talk about, you also come out of music into tech. Was it a hard transition for you, or is it similar to what I'm telling you I've gone through in terms of it's just a different stage?
Yeah, I think it's the same for me. I had an aha moment, as I'm sure everybody on this panel has, where when I was first starting to make music, I saw this transition from, well, for me, it was transition from my homies smoking and drinking and partying to playing video games. And I'm like, wait a minute, you guys don't want to go party? You rather sit here on a tour bus or sit at an arcade and play video games all night. And I'm like, there's something to this. Like, I don't know what it is yet, but they're spending money over here instead of over there now. So I did my research and fell in love with gaming in animation back in the late 80s, and really, taught myself how to code, taught myself and how to get into animation and special effects and stuff like that by going to, conventions, SIGGRAPH and Comdex. So that was my way in.
Right. And then as you're building out the various verticals that you're working in, you've got, we'll talk about GOAT a bit, talk about Finalmation. You're finding a label for finding venture capital. You're finding, distribution of your music through finding people who get what you do. Has that been a similar process?
Yeah, it's almost like an easy transition from, the music industry into the tech space, into the entertainment space in general, because one thing I tell a lot of the kids growing up now is like they live in a amazing time where everything is media. Everything is media now. So it is a very blurred line between technology, music, film, television. It's all pretty much lumped in together as the same thing. So for me, I look at it as the same way. Like any project I'm doing, whether it's, film, TV, animation, music, tech, computers, it's all the same to me. And scaling it is the same way. You literally talk to the same people that you go for funding, that you go for distribution. It's all the same people now.
Right. Susan, your thoughts on this? We've known Susan and I did an hour earlier today. Yes. We realized we've known each other for 18 years. And it's scary. You've worked with music companies, you've worked with tech companies. I mean, you worked for Dre and Jimmy. It can't be crazier than that.
It doesn't get crazier than that. So that's why it's so funny with Arabian, right? There's just like hearing the stories that with Dre, with your cars in the 80s, and whoever had like the Heat, like that was the car you drove to meet the girls. Like, so I'm sure this is like all the stories about you, but it's interesting because I come from a different perspective, right? Arabian's the true artist. And so my whole career has been like, how do we provide technology for the artists, right? So how do we like honor what they've done in the studio and provide some platform, whether it's, through Harman and JBL, it's headphones, speakers, all that stuff, so that like that, the proscenium arch, which is really like the studio, right? How do we get people into the studio, so to speak, with the artists so they feel as connected? And again, I think a lot of my career started with, earbuds, right? Which were just like, you lose the highs and the lows, and losing like 3 or 4 octaves off someone who's mixing something was terrible. And so how do you restore a lot of the integrity of the original music? And then the other thing I'll say is on the gaming front, what Arabian was saying, gaming is changing the field for everything, right? It's becoming the new platform that media sits on top of. So anyone who has a kid at home gets to watch this firsthand. So my son is 10. My son's first concert was Travis Scott in Fortnite. Like that was his experience of a concert. And he was and I watched his mind get blown the same way I went to the police, right? I went to a physical location. My son was like, no, I'm with Travis Scott. He's a giant avatar in the creative zone in Fortnite, and I can hang out with him and I can dance, whatever. So for him, that's his first concert. And that whole generation, that's how they're going to experience music. So it was really like an aha moment for me.
You talk about the highs and the lows. My first concert, to scare everybody, was the Beatles. I saw them. I never heard a note. The only thing I heard
Screaming.
was the scream of 5,000 girls at a high. It was just, ah! Go ahead. Sorry about that. All I heard was screaming. I think they played the first chord of I Want to Hold Your Hand, or I saw her standing there. I never heard a single note. So to go all the way to where we are now, where you were talking about, full fidelity in gaming and feeling the experience.
And being in the experience. I mean, you want to be close to the artist. So if like the metaverse can bring you into the studio with the artist, into the concert with the artist, and there's no nosebleed seats anymore, right? Like it's just It's really, so this whole idea, and this is what the pandemic has done, which is like, what is the meaning of a live event? What does live even mean anymore? right? So like this is the time for total reinvention and innovation.
Right. You know, similarly where we are now, and Arabian, I'd like your thoughts on this. At its core, if you break down a song, the song has to work. I mean, I won't name the artist, but I went to see an artist. It was, well, I'll tell you, it was Michael Bublé, who I don't know if any of you like, but I went to see the show. It was background singers, it was horns, it was strings, it was whatever at Staples Center. And it was it was impressive show. But at the very end, he told the band, the band left stage. They turned the house lights on in Staples. He took out his in-ear monitors, put the microphone down, everybody's blank stage, and he sang Leon Russell's Song for You from the edge of the proscenium. That was as effective as hearing the strings, the horns, the drums, the laser effects. Similarly, what are your feelings in terms of, and I don't want to get into a production in the metaverse, but it seems that it remains important that there's an emotional impact and that it isn't all just smoke and mirrors.
Yes, I agree 1000%. Like it's, like you said, orchestra full of people on a stage with an artist, or a singular artist, a Sade, or
right,
Prince singing a cappella, or something like that. There is no difference. It's how you touch a person core with whatever art form you're doing. Like I said, go back to whether it's music, it could be, and we talk about VR all the time. I'm not really bullish on VR, XR definitely, but it's how you touch the person and what you're feeding them. You know what I mean? Are you feeding them mush from back in the day, or are you feeding them steak and potatoes? Or if they're vegetarian, you're feeding them whatever vegetarians eat. So you gotta touch them at the core with whatever art form you're trying to dish out. And that's kind of what I try to do. Is I pick a targeted audience and I go, that's what they like. Like her son, Fortnite. He's all into Fortnite. Okay, how do you engage these kids in Fortnite? Okay, let's give him a concert. Like you say, he's never seen one before, and now he probably will never go to a real concert unless it's in Fortnite, because that's his experience.
Susan, your thoughts on that?
Sorry, my internet connection was, can you repeat the question? My internet went out for 1 second.
It's okay. We're talking about basically when you go, even if it's like the experience with Drop Lab, with the Drop Lab shoes, what is the core experience? What are you trying to get across? And then you enhance it, as opposed to muddling it with, bells and whistles that actually take away from the integrity of the product, the music, the company, whatever it is. I see in a lot of cases, people worry about the add-ons and aren't focused on what are we trying to do at our core.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple. It's like, yeah, totally. It's what Arabian said. It's all about the emotional connection, right? How do you make an emotional connection with someone, right? Whatever that is. And, it can be, music is obviously one of the most powerful connective tools, and has been for centuries and thousands of years, right? And so the question, if you nailed it, if either like by hearing a song, they're brought back into a memory or transported to this time or this thing, right? Like if they hear a song, they're like, oh my God, that was my first concert, or oh, I remember being here, or I remember how I felt in that moment, or I remember who I was with at that time. And you've connected to them emotionally. And that's for any media, right? That's really what it is, right? You have to connect to someone emotionally, and then you've got them.
Right.
Nothing else matters. It's really, that's the core. And if you make that connection, you've won.
And in order to reach the audience that you need to reach, ultimately, it starts with inspiration. It starts with sincerity. It starts with making, knowing that connection you want to make. Fortunately or unfortunately, in the world we live in now, it takes capital to spread the word. So, Susan, you probably have gone through more of the fundraising exercise. I know Arabian's gone through some of it. When you talk a little bit about some of the entities you've been involved in. I know we went through it in depth earlier today, but you know, you had Fat Noise, you had when you joined Beats by Dre, that was, you know, it was not guaranteed
right.
that
So,
was gonna, you know.
I mean, Beats by Dre, we didn't fundraise, right? Because it was initially a licensing entity. So it was actually able to bring in quite a bit of money very quickly. I have done the traditional VC route. I mean, the thing that's really nice about what's happening now are there are so many other options to raise money, right? There's obviously like what's just with the SEC regs that you can now raise like up to $5 million on an equity crowdfunding platform like a WeFunder. There's still, you know, all the Kickstarter applications. There's also just people who, you know, if you look at Little Michaela, which is, you know, a huge sort of virtual, you know, that's kind of a whole debate on itself of like the idea of virtual influencers, right? And these are people that are never, you know, they never go to rehab, they never don't show up for like their appointment, right? And they can be everywhere all at once. But that started as an Instagram, really organically, right? And it kind of grew, and it was an experiment. It was a social experiment. So you see a lot of other companies can start as, you know, there's entrepreneurs here that do like Facebook groups, and they kind of test ideas and theories through like, what is the stickiness in a Facebook group? How many users can you attract? So I think it's like, you know, there used to be very traditional paths to fundraise, and I think now there's a lot more. And it really depends how much capital you need. If you're doing software, you don't need anywhere near the capital of building a product where you actually have to tool things. And so it really depends where you're going down. If a lot of this audience, right, who is creating media, you've never had the democratization of tools and access has never been greater. So that gives you a lot more leverage and leeway of how you want to raise money. You don't have to go to a professional studio. The tools now, you can make a studio in your house. Sorry.
Oh, exactly. I mean, and that's been, I mean, for business development, for creating a band, there's this friction sometime of, well, maybe the tools shouldn't be that easy, and maybe people should be weeded out. And I've always been of the, you know, let's see how it goes, as opposed to, you know, why should we let you do with Pro Tools what I used to have to spend hours and hours and hours, you know, composing and working on keyboards. Now you can drop it into Pro Tools and you do it at home. Is that fair? Yeah, it is fair. You know, it's called progress, and it's called, you know, the growth of platforms. So, Arabian, you've got a bunch of toys behind you there. Could you do what you do without the toys you have behind you?
No, they never take my toy. They'll have
Are
to
you
pry
frozen?
my toys from my dead body. Sorry, I gotta keep them. But you know,
right.
It's interesting though what you said, that progress in technology. I can give the same tools. I can give my mixing console. I can give my keyboards. I can give, you know, my computers, my software, all of my plugins with all of my sounds, and even my analog, you know, synthesizers or keyboards to 10 different people. One may come up with a hit song, right? So it doesn't matter,
right,
progress of technology. It's who's using it and how they use it. Simple.
Well, then that explains. I have this Gibson guitar at home that I thought was defective, but everybody who picks it up seems to figure out how to make it work. I assumed it was broken because nothing ever comes out of it when I touch it. You're launching your PC company, Arabian. Talk about it a little bit, and how are you going about bringing it to market? How are you addressing the raising capital situation?
Well, I decided not to raise capital for that because, you know, I found a friend of mine says, man, you found like a you know, 2-person running back hole through the line to a touchdown. Because when COVID hit, what happened was, as we all know, go try to buy a computer right now. Go try to buy a graphics card. Go try to buy a gaming computer. You can't get it because everything is back ordered because of COVID and because of the manufacturing and the tariffs and everything else. And I found out that because artists couldn't go out and perform live anymore, DJs couldn't do concerts, they couldn't do clubs, they couldn't do festivals, artists couldn't perform, everybody stuck at home, everybody moved to social media to perform. And one of the best platforms for performing what nobody knew until recently was Twitch, because it allows you to showcase your art or your whatever you're doing and monetize it directly, right? So I started looking at that and following some of my DJ buddies, and some of them started making money. But, you know, and I hope there's no Mac lovers or Apple lovers in the building. The problem that they all had was they were all using MacBooks to DJ and try to stream at the same time. And that became a nightmare for them. And because I'm a gamer and a technologist and a PC gamer fanatic, I'm like, oh, all you need to do is go buy a gaming PC. And you can buy them. So I started my company GOAT with 3Gs to fix that problem, build streaming computers for artists and DJs to allow them to stream properly.
Is that machine behind you right now? Or did you
that one's a GOAT. I've got so many GOATs around me. This is the actual, this one's one that's being built, but this is what a GOAT looks like. It's a small kind of, everybody calls it the lunchbox. So it's kind of, you can carry this around with you on tour or when you go
great
DJ,
packaging.
Yeah, and stream anywhere you want. And it's a full-blown gaming computer, but just kind of micro-sized.
It's got a handle on top?
Yeah, it's got a handle on it. They call it the lunchbox. We call it the GOAT lunchbox.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you're not raising money for that, but I mean, you've been involved in other ventures. That keyboard, the touchpad, the French company.
Yep, with UA, the keyboard, the kind of touch keyboard, which is around here somewhere too. I got so much stuff around here, and then the M Classic, the 4K streaming device that I built for games. Yeah, I'm just like a little mad scientist over here in my little world.
So when you have had to raise money, how have you gone about doing it?
I asked Ted. I called Ted up. Hey, Ted, man, money over here. I know you know everybody on planet Earth. Can you hook us up with some connections? So,
but you know, I would say this on the money raising front too. If you look at like Techstars and a lot of the accelerators right now, you know, because it's a lot of speed to market, you can get some access to capital, but you're really getting these connections and you're getting people to help you refine your business plan. And there are so many different accelerators, and a lot of them are like vertically focused. Like there's fintech accelerators, and like, you know, LA, the music accelerator in LA just had their showcase, I think yesterday. So, you know, there's so many options where people can go in and get a group of really smart people around them, give up some equity, and maybe get, you know, $150,000, $200,000 to really, but really it's the connections and the people that know how to help you raise money and help you refine your pitch. And those are really good options for people.
So let me ask this. Similarly to when you sign with a label and an A&R person brings you in, and then they put you with a producer, and then, you know, label execs have ideas on, can you change that song, whatever. There's a good and a bad part to taking outside money if in some cases it blurs or redirects your vision. And
correct.
So when you go through, I mean, I heard from a friend the other day, literally, she didn't get a job because the person who looked at her resume said it was missing some key words, not skills, but key words in the resume that made them uninterested in the person. And if she'd only had a few more buzzwords, she would have at least gotten into the final round. So as you look at polishing your deck and polishing your pitch, are you taking some of the edge off of the company?
Yeah, I mean, for example, let's go take Arabian, right? So if Arabian wanted to get, you know, a GOAT computer and he was able to raise a bunch of capital, what would happen is that Arabian's vision, what he wanted, there'd be other agendas in the room, right? Because once someone gives you money, it also becomes their agenda. And so, and oftentimes, and what you hope is that agendas are always aligned, and theoretically they're always aligned in the big picture way, which is like, we want you to get to an exit. We want to have a liquidity event, but then it's the process, the journey along the way. Usually there's always a moment where you're mismatched, right? Like what you want to do, what you think is best for your company might be best for your company, but you've got a bunch of money in there that they answer to other people. So like they're looking at like what's best for their limited partners of their funds, right? So the alignment, it's very hard to get alignment all the way through. That's why I'm, especially for early entrepreneurs, I like accelerators, because it's a very finite period of time and their whole job is to launch you, get you like out of the nest, right? And help you. So you're not taking enough money from them to really cloud your vision, but you're getting the skills and the tool set and refining your pitch and your vision. Listen, the more you can keep the company to yourself, like what Arabian's doing, the better, right? Because it's your show. You live and die on your own decisions, and nobody else's point of view is in the mix. So you have yourself to blame and yourself to congratulate, right? So that's not always possible. Sometimes people do need to bring money in along the way. But remember, when you bring in money, you're getting in bed with that person, and make sure that you're really excited to be in bed with them, because even if they seem amazing, there will be a moment where the thrill is gone.
Where you'll wake up with a hangover, right?
And when the thrill is gone, it's gone, you know?
So we talk a lot about in media and technology, smart money and dumb money and institutional money. The one that comes up a lot lately, and is it playing into media as much as we think it is family office, quote, family money.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to have like risen to the top in the last couple of years of, I'm talking to someone in a family office that's handling their investments. Is that right front and center for you?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's nice about family offices is that oftentimes there's a mandate, right? And it could be fueled by some passion, like especially around healthcare related stuff. Like there might be someone in a family who had a certain condition or did military service or was very focused on PTSD. So oftentimes family offices, which historically hadn't really participated in more early stage venture and been more conservative. I think, there's a gold rush going on. It's been going on for years. I think there's a lot more of the people running family offices want to get people involved earlier stage, but it can be strategic to have a family office in there if what your mission and vision is something that they fully and passionately believe in. Then you don't have the whole LP agenda and other things. You really are just, it's if they want you to succeed because they want to see you find a cure for cancer, they want to see you democratize access for women, or it's just, there's so many different things. So I think family offices can be really productive, can be really great, and I have seen more and more get involved at earlier stage companies. Side, I don't look at I don't have as much experience in like later stage capital raising, like in the private equity rounds. So all my discussion, what I'm saying to you today, is really more early stage focused.
Right. Now, when you were raising money, and you're currently still I think you're in your second raise now for Drop Labs. Mm-hmm. What do you look for in a partner in terms of, we've talked about alignment of vision and whatever. Does it work? You also, I mean, or do you end up compromising? How much do you compromise right now? Because you've been through this for almost 20 years. Are you at a point of I'm not compromising anymore?
When I did first raise, I thought to myself, I don't know. These guys are the VC, they know everything about everything, right? And the thing is that if you've been a builder or a creator, you kind of know your craft, right? And you know what works and what doesn't work. Like, I really understand pricing, right? And so I think you have to really trust your gut and your instinct more. And I think it's easy to kind of get like, oh, well, they think we should do this, so maybe they're right. Maybe they see something that I don't see. And I think that's what gets hard, is when there's a lot more people in the room, your gut instinct, which is usually what you need to go by, sometimes gets thrown by the wayside. And so I had to learn that early, of like, okay, this doesn't feel right. I think it really needs to be this, and stick to my guns and not say, okay, we'll make it this price, because that you guys think we should, you can never go up, you can only go down. But I knew the price point was too high. So there's been things like that where you have to really trust yourself. And again, what you look for if you're going to go the investment route, you look for investors that have deep expertise, and more than expertise, connections, right? Like if Arabian were going to go and I'm going to get money for this PC, I want to look at like a VC like Bitcraft, because they've been in gaming forever, right? They were one of the earliest, funds in gaming, and their network is fantastic, right? So they can walk us in the door. The people that I want to do deals with are actually people they've invested in. So I can go right to the top, right? So you start looking at like, how do I get where I need to go faster? Because it's all about connections, right? Where are the companies I need to talk to? Who are the people I need to do deals with? And if a VC or an investment group or a family office has the connections that you need for your business, then it becomes much more interesting.
Thoughts, Arabian?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And also too, you know what, I want to, something you guys talked about at the beginning. I look at this whole thing with dealing with investors and angels. It's kind of like a girlfriend. They look at you as a girlfriend.
Yeah, totally.
They do. It's like
you're dating
right now, and then while they're hanging out with you and whining and dining you, another girl walks by and they're like, "Ooh, we're gonna need you to hurry up and make some money over here so we can take this money and start whining and dining that over there." And that's kind of how I look at it. So I try my if I can do it myself. Not really. I don't even really. I guess I do self-invest, but I try to come up with some types of intellectual properties where I don't have to really do much to it to scale it and go direct to consumer and sell it. And then once I get to there, then it's either, okay, I'm making enough money to scale it on my own, or investors kind of go, well, you already got a pipeline. Let's just, here, don't bother us. Like, here's money, go away, and you'll get a return. That's why I try to build it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I like the here's money, go away. That's good. My parents used to do that. Here's $10, just go away, come back later. It worked for me. You know, we talked earlier about incubators and accelerators. You know, at MediaTech Ventures, we have the collective, which we work with media-focused startups. The pandemic has hurt a lot of people. Sometimes I feel I'm going through survivor's guilt in that, because there was a demand for knowledge around streaming, around, using remote platforms. Actually, things have been, we don't own a concert venue. We don't manage a band. We're not on tour. So we didn't feel a lot of the pain that, live music has felt. It actually allowed for the collective, our incubator program, to not be based necessarily in Austin anymore. We had people from all over the country. So it had opened it up to basically to providing a knowledge base and collaborating with people that didn't necessarily have to drive to downtown Austin once a week and sit in a room together. And, and great learning experience, but you start opening your horizons to people of how do we share knowledge? And I'll have to also tell you, in our classes, there have been people that we've worked with remotely that we've learned from. Our students sometimes become the teachers in certain areas. So, Arabian, I know you are trying to develop a program, to empower at-risk youth, the Black community, people that don't normally get the shot. How is that unfolding for you?
Oh yeah, like I'm doing it all across the country as much as I can. I partnered with a company called Solar Impact in South LA. We're building a esport arena, technology center, learning center there. That's should be up and running in June and July now. Because of COVID, we had to put it back a year. Oprah gave a bunch of money. Even Dre and Jimmy gave some money, and a bunch of other celebrities got involved with that one. I just got contacted by the Inglewood School District, who they claim that they want to be now the mecca for entertainment and technology and animation and all of that kind of stuff for Inglewood. So they brought me in to help them scale that. So that's going to be amazing to kind of give back to somewhere where I grew up part of the time, besides Compton and Inglewood were my two places. And then I'm working with Chipotle, because Chipotle really, really wants to get into education and give back. So every company I can get involved with, and including Microsoft, they're one of my partners as well, that's really, really into education and giving back to inner city youth.
One of the stories that I tell is that I've had interns over the year and people that I've mentored, and my most successful one in terms of continuous contact was a guy named Daryl Ballantyne, who was the co-founder of Lyric Find. He was my intern at EMI, and I've now been on the board for 16 years, and I get paid a retainer from my intern. So it was a very nice outcome to see the student become the teacher. Every once in a while, I still show him a few tricks, but I refer to him, yeah, this kid, and I realize it's 20 years. He's not a kid anymore. There is a certain gratification from watching people that you see a spark in succeed. And I think whether there's a direct reward from it or it's just an emotional reward, for me, it's been really important. And I know, Susan, we talked earlier today about what you're doing, using your technology with people suffering from PTSD, how music on a neural level. So I don't know if Arabian, you got a chance to see it, but we're talking about music that you feel. You don't necessarily hear everything. There's frequencies that affect you that are either sub or supersonic frequencies that are there, but we experience them a different way. So Susan, it might be interesting if you can talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I am not an artist. I'm more of a technologist. And so when I saw this technology, which is really haptics, and looked at what happens when you apply this to the feet and started seeing people's reactions, started doing more, because again, it's all like, I learned about like the difference between hearing and listening, which I didn't even know there was a difference, right? I've been in headphones for so long, and listening is a deliberate act, right? So you can choose to listen to this conference or what I'm saying, or you don't have to, right? But when you hear as a sense. It's your entire sensory system getting lit up. And what does your sensory system do? It carries signals to your brain. So at the end of the day, everything comes back to the brain. This is neuroscience. So I started doing more and more research on this. I'm like, okay, wow, you have mechanoreceptors in your feet that are tuned to different vibrational frequencies. Like one called Meissner's corpuscles is the subsonic bass, right? It's 20 to 50 hertz. The other passing corpuscles are really like 150 to 300. And so it's just been fascinating to see, like, we are literally wired for sound. We pick up information environmentally from the ground. This is when we were, Neanderthals in caves, and we had to hear that, oh my God, there's, something's going to explode. There's going to be a volcano, or there's a group of wild animals. And so again, we used to hear environmental information through our bodies that would activate fight or flight. So really looking at like the neuroscience of what are frequencies, what's vibration, what is sound, and how you experience it on a physiological level, as much as how an intellectual level. Like, I love this song, but then it's also about how does this thing make me feel? And it's not just music, right? If you think about what people use, like soundscapes, rainstorms, things like that, like people use to calm down, right? We do a lot of work with PTSD, with people who are doing EMDR in recovery centers, vets, and it's really about deactivating fight or flight. And music, different frequencies, different vibrations can actually deactivate your fight or flight index and put you into a different brain state. So music is just one of these things. And if you look at even some of the research being done with 40 hertz frequencies in Alzheimer's, like, music has always been the thing that not just unites us, but there's healing medicine frequencies. I mean, it's like we're just peeling back the onion of all these things that music, sound really can provide us on a human level.
Okay, I'm going to go somewhere with you, and if you tell me move on, I'll move on. I'm serious. I'm not being funny. We talked earlier today about the work you're doing there. I know because we talked at the time, your father recently passed away. Mm-hmm. Did he get to experience what you were doing, and did you see any connection with what we're talking about in terms of easing him, making him more comfortable? I mean, did you give him a window into what you were doing?
I didn't. My father was too far gone. My father had Alzheimer's, and so
I know
we
talked. Yeah.
So I just for this group. So anyway, and he was in a very advanced state when I started doing this work. So, but my mother, who suffers from severe depression, anxiety, was using the technology, and now my son, who has dyslexia, has very bad ADHD. Actually, I used this tech on him. He tried it, and he was like, "Mommy, I want to use the shoes. And it's really not the shoes, it's really the tech, right? I want to have this experience." So what he does is he uses this to almost come down so that he can go focus. right? So we're doing work with autism, right? So this is, again, sensory integration as well. And so that's the kind of stuff for me, for like where my journey has led me into music and technology, of like, how do I use all this to help people, to impact people? And it can be in the guise of music and gaming and all these other things, right? But again, it's like, what is it doing for the human? And
Right.
yes, and like I said, I wish my father had, I'm hoping that the 40 hertz frequencies and all the stuff they're doing for Alzheimer's, that I can contribute to it in some way, that there's going to be some sort of cure or some palliative, because for any of you who have experienced what it is like to watch someone have Alzheimer's, it's like the longest goodbye you could ever imagine. So anything that we can do to help alleviate, obliterate it would be great.
Every once in a while, I have like minute moments, nothing like that. I mean, what's also funny is, we talk about being in the music business, how hard can it be on brain surgery? But actually, what we do has a lot of impact on people's emotional state, physical state, their well-being. I believe music got a lot of people, your favorite album got you through the last 18 months.
Absolutely.
That you put that on and it takes you out of this. But every once in a while I'll run into somebody and they'll say, I heard you speak about such and such, and I went and tried something and it, quote, changed the way I look at things. And that's what, for me, really makes it all worthwhile. So, and I'm doing it in little ways. You guys are doing it in big ways. So, I mean, it's an honor to have you here. I don't know if we can do any questions. Christy wrote me. She can write me right now and tell me. Maybe Paul can come in early and throw another perspective on it. But if anybody has any questions, I guess they can post them. This has been great for me today.
I will say one thing too, that I just wanted to say that this is like, so, and I'm always in awe of all the artists that are out there. I've seen firsthand when we use our tech and we apply it to music. So for example, there was a guy who had very limited mobility, older man, he had a bunch of neuropathy in his feet. And he said to me, can you play My Baby by the Platters? And I said, okay. And I literally turned it on and he started crying, and it connected him to this emotion. And so like, I just think for all the artists out there, like what you guys do is so magical, because how you can move people. And to your point, Ted, like the last 18 months and the amount of loss that people have gone through, all of us in certain ways. And music was always there. Music was always like, whether you were trying to do a dance party with your friends, those like horrible Zoom COVID dance parties that were like so embarrassing and ridiculous, but They were something. So kudos to all the artists and to Arabian out there who've really impacted so many people that they don't even know about. So it's pretty amazing.
So I'm going to ask you this, the final question, then Paul's going to come in. What advice would you give to the next Drop Labs, the next Goat PC? We've got students out here. We've got people that are actually leaving their day jobs to follow their media tech passion, and basically, trying to explain to their husbands, wives, parents why they're quitting medical school to go build, a keyboard. What's your, startups for dummies, one or two things to take away?
Susan?
So you want me to go first? Okay. Yeah. If you have if the idea wakes you up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. and you cannot stop thinking about it, chances are you're going to have to do it, right? What you don't want to do is do it because everyone else seems to be doing something. I got to find my idea. This thing has to literally keep you up at night. It has to be your thing. And then you need to really listen to yourself. You normally have the answers. You also need to get a bunch of very smart people that you trust around you as a sounding board. Because a lot of times people just try and do everything themselves. And so, I mean, there's so many things, and the journey changes, and the answers, you usually have the answers, but you have to like slow down and really get quiet and really listen to yourself to get yourself the answers. And I would tell everyone, if that thing wakes you up at 3 a.m. every night, you need to go do it. You might need a side hustle, right? To get to
Right.
finance it, but
Right.
you need to go do it.
Right. Very cool. Arabian?
Yeah, and for me, I like to simplify everything. I call myself I'm a Homer Simpson, right? I love donuts. So for me, I always say if it's ooh, like ooh, and the next day it's ooh. So I always tell people, and it may sound kind of crazy, never fall in love with your music, your ideas, your concepts, anything.
Yeah.
If you don't fall in love with what you do, when something comes along that's so amazing and you fall in love with it, then you go, that's it. Like, that's the donut.
Right.
That's the one that I've been waiting for. Because if you're a narcissist and everything you do you fall in love with, you never know. You never know
Right.
when that
Right.
one glazed donut comes along. So don't fall in love with what you do. Just do things. And something else somebody told me a long time ago. Why do you do so much stuff? Never put all your eggs in one basket. I'm like, well, if I got a whole bunch of eggs in a basket and it falls, not every last one is going to break. If I got one egg and I break it, I'm done. So I just do all kind of stuff and whatever rises.
It just shows how creative you are. You're just creative, right?
Yeah.
And you just create different things.
Yeah, create so I get that glazed donut.
Yeah. I had that moment years ago. A guy named Alex Rigopoulos, who started a rock band, showed me a prototype of it in the mid-90s. And I went, wow. And I almost moved back to Boston to work for him. And that's that moment when you go, yeah. Because we see stuff every day and you go, that's cool, that's cool, that's nice, yeah. But then there's that ooh, as you said. And my thing is, never ask your friends what they think of your idea. Ask strangers.
Yes.
Your friends will tell you they love it. So Paul's gonna come back in with us. He's got some final questions and some final comments. And it's been an honor and a pleasure to talk with you guys again. Arabian, I'll see both of you back in LA next week.
Yes, for sure.
Hey, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
You're on.
I think he's muted.
Paul's
This
muted.
is my favorite. Paul, you're muted. It's technology.
I am muted, which actually plays very nicely into the one question I had, and it's that I've been out.
By the way, you're dressed like Vince Lombardi. You should be on the side of a football field going.
It's all in how you wear the fedora, right?
It's everything. It's everything.
It's a good Austin look.
It is.
Thank you. Right, this is my Austin look in Houston.
Totally,
that's exactly right. I've been chatting for about 45 minutes with the group as we've been watching on the live stream, and in Austin, we don't see as much of this, which is what drives my question. I've had a conversation with somebody who's doing headphones. I've had a conversation with somebody who's building a camera tech, and I've had a conversation with somebody who's working in speakers.
Go hardware.
Exactly that. Last night, I had a wonderful conversation at the downtown Launchpad in Houston with a gentleman who believes that Houston's distinct strength is that, Susan. It's hardware in media in particular.
Hardware's looking for a new capital. So
I found that fascinating, right?
Yeah.
I found that just fascinating. That now the interesting challenge and kind of the question is, right, Arabian, you've got Innovate and in Los Angeles, and Susan, a lot of your work has been on more so the hardware side of things. That in our world, there's this, I don't know, is it catch-22? Is it a cart before the horse? Does the hardware enable the media? Does the media enable the hardware? Is it important for, here's the question, and Ted, I'd like you to share your thought as well, because you've done so much in this space. Is it important for an ecosystem, a regional ecosystem, to identify that kind of distinct strength in the media business? That, you know what, we're better at the creation, we're better at the content, we're better with the artists, we're better with the storytelling, or you know what, we've got NASA here, we've got the transportation industry here. You know what we could do in Houston? We could put together the next set of speakers or sneakers with haptic feedback, right? they're very different kinds of companies. And it struck me when I was listening to you that the capital for those different kinds of startups likely comes from different sources. Your thoughts?
Do you want me? So I guess so. There is the chicken and egg content question, right? I think this is the VR problem, right? Is the question is like media drives everything, right? Like the hardware without content is a box, or it's a set of like it's empty. Yeah, exactly. And so I think the big problem for VR has been, what is the thing that you can do in VR that is so magical that you can't do on another platform? And that thing is going to be some kind of interaction with content. And that content hasn't been created yet that would drive people to adopt, right? Like, you know, obviously look at like consoles, right? So they're married, like they're so inextricably linked with each other. The interesting thing with the China disaster, with like the tariffs, the IC shortage, all this stuff, what it's really driven, and Biden has like kept up the Trump tariffs, manufacturing's coming back to the States. And what that allows you to do is a lot more experimentation. It allows you to do smaller runs of things. You're not having like, you know, huge MOQs, minimum order quantities in China. So I'm seeing LA is having a massive manufacturing renaissance. And by the way, Houston, which is where all of like the digital signal processing, a lot of the chips, all the silicon really was in, like TI is based in Houston, I think. So there's so, and also like, where's the talent pool, right? You have a lot of hardware talent in Houston, which makes sense why a lot of like this talent is coming into sort of hardware design development. But hardware has also used a lot of crowdfunding platforms, right? So if you have hardware that's going to solve a need, then there's a lot of those, the most successful Kickstarter campaigns and, you know, Indiegogo have all been hardware, because you've like identified something that like captures someone's imagination. So you don't have to just do the VC route. Of course, you need a lot more capital, but you do have a lot of these equity crowdfunding platforms and funding platforms that you can use. That everything's democratized now, so that can help quite a bit. But the content and the hardware go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah,
Arabian, I'm looking at your studio, so to speak, and it kind of exemplifies the point, right? You can't look at it anywhere on the screen with you there without seeing the implication of the hardware.
Yeah,
you got any thoughts?
And
so
here's the other thing.
Paul,
go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was going to say, looking at the microphone behind you, did you ever connect with Skipper?
Not yet, but I'll do that this week. And you know, like I was going to say.
So
yeah.
Talk about a passion. The microphone behind our Arabian is called a NEAT, N-E-A-T microphone. It was created by a guy named Wise, who was an artist that I signed. He was signed to our label years ago. I went to a booth at CES and he was standing there, and I go, "What are you doing here?" He goes, "This is my company." I said, "What are you doing with a microphone company?" He goes, "I wasn't happy with the microphones we were using in the studio, so I decided to go out and figure out how to create new microphones." It was a passion project. It became big. It was something that did keep him up at night, and he did have that ooh moment. And when Arabian and I were talking about a week ago, I all of a sudden went, "Wait a minute, is that a neat mic?" And I introduced him to Skipper. They're hopefully going to have a conversation about what might be the next generation of that microphone. So
and
again,
there you have it. All roads lead to Ted.
No.
No, it was
I
true.
love connecting. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Paul. I'm sorry. Take us home.
Not at all. Cheers. Arabia, did you have any other thoughts on
that
point? We've got like 1 minute.
Yeah, so I got you. It's really all about your passion. What do you want to do? What do you want to see? Find that little niche. I always tell people, and this is to all the inventors and creators and artists and everything out there, stop trying to, and I hope I don't get the federal government that's kind of looking at me for saying the word plutonium. Stop trying to create plutonium. Take something that's already made, that's very simple, and just modify it enough to make it something new and exciting for people out there. Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. Oh, I said that already, but you know what I mean? They're all the same. They use text and photos to do exactly the same thing. They're all billion-dollar companies. So you don't have to create something new. Just find a little niche and, you know, make your fortune.
I got to jump back in. That's the other thing that's similar to music and tech. You're a band.
Let me before you let me Ted before you let me just say goodnight because our stream gets shut down in 15 seconds. We can keep talking, but thank you all incredibly on behalf of MediaTech Ventures. There are 200 people here at Kung Fu Saloon in Houston that definitely want to meet all three of you. So as soon as we can get back together in person, I'd love to invite you to Texas to do that. Thank you again. Good night,
thanks
everybody.
So much. Really, thanks for hosting.
Okay.
This is awesome.
And I'll see Susan tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. And I'll see you IRL.
What? You're reading?
We're on another panel together
fantastic.
tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Good night, everyone.